nirasya sarva sandeham akikritya sudarshanam prakashita rahasyam tam bhajami gurumishwaram. Shri Govinda Pararavinda Marupananya Vilashojitan Purna Prema Rasutsavo Jalamanu Vritti Prasannananan Shashvad Krishna Katha Mahamrita Payo Rasho Muda Kedato Bande Bhagavata Nimananulavam Murdna Nipatyakshito Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvishe Nama Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Mandamater Gati Matsarvasva Parambojo Radha Madana Mohano Kuladi Devatamar Madana Mohan Jar Sevak Raghunatha Rup Sanatan Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Echai Goshai Kori Charana Vandan Jahahite Vignanasha Bhishta Puran Adadanastrinam dantoir yacheham puna puna Srimad Rupa Parambojo Dhyudesam Janma Janmani Raganugami Bhajano Lasamanasanam Shri Radhaya Sahasara Smaratam Brajendhum Shri Rupa Para Kamalā Shrita Chetasam Me Chittam Satam Madhukari Yatupada Padme. Yaramya Nikilaga Shanga Shamani Shutra Tritim Sangata Yasvad Rasikai Sukabdi Janani Dikarya Mukti Spriham Yadhyata Hiraye Vrajendra Tanuja Premamrita Syandini Saji Yad Hari Bhakta Vrinda Mohita Dhanyeha Padyavali. So by the grace of Shri Kali Yuga Pavana, the Swabhajana Vibhajana Prayojan Avatar Prema Purushottam Karuna Mahasagar Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and his beloved Parshad, the crest jewel of Gaudiya Vaishnava charges, the fulfiller of his heart's desire, Shri Rupa Goswami Pad. Again, today we'll continue our discussion of Padyavali. So, in our last class, we came to the conclusion of our discussion of Sriman Mahaprabhu's celebrated instruction, tṛṇād sunīcena, taror sahiṣṇunā, amāninā, mānadena kīrtanīyaḥ, sadā hariḥ. So we'll hear now just the tail end of that, a few final remarks that are made about the importance of this instruction in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then we'll go further into the prakarana that this citation began, namely that of Krishna-kīrtana Mahatmya, or a section which provides or cites verses that are illustrative of the manner in which Vaishnavas can engage in Krishna Nama Sankirtanam. So I've shared the file, and I'll start from the end of the previous file, the last few paragraphs of the previous commentary. So, Sriman Mahaprabhu concludes his explanation to Sri Swarup Damodar and Sri Ramananda Rai of the verse under discussion by reiterating the verse's primary purpose of leading a sadhaka towards the goal of prema. Prema for the feet of Krishna manifests for one who, becoming like this, that is, becoming far lower than even grass, tolerant like a tree, free from conceit, and respectful, takes Krishna's name. So prema manifests for one who can become, as is described in this verse, and chant Krishna's name. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswamipad also speaks emphatically about the importance of this verse after the explanation of the verse given by Sriman Mahaprabhu in the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there's 3 citations of the tṛṇād sunīcena verse, one in the Adi Lila, one in the final chapter of the Antya Lila, and once in the course of instructions given to Raghunath Das Goswami. So we've cited the explanation given in the Antya Lila, we've cited the explanation given in the Adi Lila, we've made reference to Mahaprabhu's intent in his citation of the verse to Raghunath Das Goswami. So this is how the Adi Lila explanation is capped off, if you will, by Kaviraj Goswami. He says, raising my arms, I say, everyone, listen! String this verse on the thread of the name and wear it around your throat. On Prabhu's order, practice the teachings given in this verse. Then you will certainly attain Sri Krishna's feet. So the metaphor of stringing this verse on the thread of the name and wearing it around the throat implies that the 4 qualities mentioned in this verse are like jewels, and one can wear and thus display them by continuously chanting the name with one's throat. As a person becomes bright and attractive by wearing a jeweled necklace, so a Vaishnava becomes endowed with brightness and attractiveness in mind, speech, and action by fostering these 4 qualities and continuously chanting the name. In this way, a Vaishnava eventually becomes free from aparad and blessed with the self-manifestation of Krishna Prem, such that they, quote, attain, that is, acquire the privilege of personally serving the feet of Sri Krishna himself. So, no further explanation required. Having, had some 14, sessions explaining this verse, then the import of this should be, to some extent, or some at least small window into its import should be available. So, this is how he begins the section on Krishna Kirtan, by mention of the manner in which Kirtan is to be done, and the idea that it is to be done continuously. So then the question may remain, how should this Kirtan be done? We've discussed the how in terms of the attitude and approach which is to be taken to the Kirtan, but someone may still wish to see specific examples of verses that one can chant, or prayers and ways of addressing Bhagavan that are conducive to this this type of sadhana bhakti known as Kirtan. So the remainder of this prakaran, this section, gives or cites verses that illustrate the act or that can be used for engaging in the limb of bhakti known as Kirtan. So, we'll look at these. śrī-rāmeti janārdaneti jagatāṁ nātheti nārāyaṇe ānandeti dayāpareti kamalā-kānteti kṛṣṇeti ca Nāma-kīrtana kalolamagnam muhur muhyantaṁ galad-aśru-netram avaśaṁ Nātha nityaṁ kuru. O Śrī-rāma, O Janārdana, O Jagannāth, O Nārayaṇa, O Ānanda, O Dayāpara, O Kamalā-kānta, O Krishna. Please always make me immersed in the billowing waves of the ocean of the superb nectar of your beautiful names. Repeatedly mystified, brimming with tears streaming from my eyes, and overwhelmed, O Nātha. So this is also one of many verses from Lakshmidhara's Bhagavan Nam Komudi, which are cited by Sri Rupapad here in the Padyavali. So, we'll look at some commentary on these names of Bhagavan given in the verse. The commentator initially interprets the name Śrī-rāma to refer to the Paramatma, as per the following verse, a variant of which is attributed to Padma Puran. Quote, yogis take pleasure, or ramana, in the infinite, eternal bliss, the conscious self. Thus he, Paramatma, who is, quote, the conscious self and eternal bliss and the infinite, is referred to by the word Rama. The commentator then offers a second interpretation of the name Rama. Quote, he who causes pleasure, that is, he who pleases his bhaktas by granting them their desired objects. The commentator then relates the rest of the names of Sri Bhagavan in the verse to the name Rama by reference to various implications each of the names can convey. Because Rama is the Paramatma, or he who pleases his bhaktas, he is thus known as janārdaneti, that is, he who causes the people, jana, of the world, to entreat, ardana, or worship himself. So I'll just add here that this is a lesser known or a more uncommon way of interpreting the name janārdaneti. So the commentator cites one, reference to the meaning of various dhatus, which states that the ard root has one meaning, which is to solicit or entreat. So more commonly, the ard dhatu refers to to strike or to destroy or to consume. And janārdaneti is also typically commented using a different meaning of the root ardana. But here, he gives it in this way. So just in case anyone was wondering, for example, there's the well-known statement, bhav-grahi janārdaneti, where it is saying that Janārdana, or Bhagavan, is he who imbibes or partakes of the bhava of bhaktas. So the reason that the name Janārdana is used in that well-known saying is that ardana can mean to consume or to take. So Janārdana in that context would have the literal import of he who takes from or who consumes something of or from the people or from a bhakta, a jana. So here, a different sense of the root ard is drawn upon to get this meaning of he who causes the people of the world to entreat or worship himself. And you could take the word janārdana in that famous saying, bhav-grahi janārdana, in that way as well, but that's, I've never seen anyone comment on it in that way. So anyhow, either one is applicable. So he's saying that Rama means he who pleases his bhaktas. And furthermore, Bhagavan is janārdana because he inspires them to worship himself. And why is that? Because he is Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. That is, he who with affection pleases his own dependents. So why does Bhagavan engage people in worshipping himself? Because this is actually what makes them the most happy. So he, caringly looks after those who are dependent upon them by inspiring them with prema, or inspiring them with love, which is the most fulfilling of all things, such that they desire to worship him, to relate with him, to be his devotees. And then, as, quote, Rama, he fulfills those desires that they have, and thus he's perceived to be, whereas as if, he's the embodiment or the source of pleasure. And that point will also become later on. So, following the progression of thought, he's Rama because he pleases his bhaktas, he's Janārdana because he causes them to worship himself, he's he does that because he's the Lord or the affectionate caretaker of everyone in the world who's dependent upon him. And why is that? Because he is Nārāyaṇa, that is the shelter of all human beings or jivas throughout the universe. So he's the Lord of them because he's the shelterer of them. Alternately, the name Nārāyaṇa can refer to he whose shelter is a multitude of human beings, that is, specifically the women of Braja. So, quote, Nara, it can be taken to mean human beings in general, can be taken to mean living beings in general, or it can be taken to refer to a specific class of quote-unquote human beings, which for those, of the line of thought of of the compiler here, would principally or ultimately refer to the ultimate class of Bhagavan's bhaktas, or the ultimate class of human bhaktas, the Braja Gopis. So the commentator offers that interpretation as well. And why is he the shelter of all such living beings, generally and specifically? Because of his being a bestower of pleasure upon them. Thus he is called Ānanda, that is, he who causes bliss, meaning he who is known to be the embodiment of bliss itself, on account of his being a bestower of bliss upon others who are devoid of bliss, as per the statement in the Taittiriya Upanishad, quote, Raso Vaisa, he indeed is rasa. So, often we think of the idea of Bhagavan being the shelter of all living beings in an ontological sense, that they're all constituted of his energy, their existence is sustained by him. But from another perspective, the perspective of this line of thought given by the commentator, as if we look at it as per the way Jiva Goswami introduces the condition of a human being, or of an embodied being at the beginning of the Priti Sandarbha, by saying that for every Purusha, or every embodied being, the fundamental necessity is to be relieved of suffering and to achieve satisfaction. So the thing that actually shelters or nourishes or pleases any living being, as per, Rama, Narayana, Jagannath, these names that are being spoken, that actual thing ultimately is Ananda or Sukha. So he ultimately proves himself to be the true shelter of all living beings because he provides them with not just their existence, but the fulfillment of their existence, or he makes their existence meaningful and worthwhile insofar as they're able to experience bliss, or ananda. So this is the way that the commentator is reading the progression of thought, by saying he's Narayana because he is Ananda, or he is the cause or the source of all Ananda. Yes, I see a hand. Do you want to comment something?
Yes. Who's the commentator here?
The same commentator we're following on this whole text, Birchandra Goswami Prabhupada, a 9th generation descendant of Nityananda Prabhu.
Thank you.
In this way, he shows affection to living beings, and thus he is described as dayāpara, or compassionate, meaning he who is tender or melted with compassion. By virtue of his being possessed of such qualities, he is desirable even to Lakshmi, and thus is next described as Kamalā-kānta, he who is desirable Kanta to, or ultimately the beloved of Kamala, Lakshmi. So the way that he shelters all, gives bliss to all, shows compassion to all, this endears him greatly to Lakshmi. So this would imply that Lakshmi is filled with profound compassion for all, and is very satisfied when she sees Bhagavan expressing compassion and fulfilling the existence or the desires of all living beings. Or, from another perspective, Kamalā-kānta refers to, quote, he who is the lover or pleasure, Ramana or Kanta. So the word Kanta can mean Ramana, one who is a source of pleasure or an object of desire or a lover. So the name Kamalā-kānta can alternately be interpreted to refer to Radharani, or he who is the lover or pleasure of Sri Radha. So Kanta, no problem. But how does the name Kamala, which is a well-known name of Lakshmi, refer to Radha? So he explains it as follows: she in whose hand there is a lotus for the sake of play with him, Sri Krishna. So we hear in various poems of Rupa Goswami and others that Radharani at times will hold a play lotus in her hand, and if Krishna's too mischievous, he'll get a strike from this lotus flower. And Krishna himself also sometimes holds a play lotus, and this is described in Govindalilamrita and elsewhere. So, in that sense, Radharani can also be described by the name Kamala. So Kamalā-kānta, which is a well-known name of Nārayaṇe, or the consort of Lakshmi, can also be seen or interpreted as a name of Radharani's Krishna. As such, that is, since he is the lover of Sri Radha, or, although he is so desirable to Lakshmi, he is Krishna, that is, the darling child of blessed Yashoda, meaning he is Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna of Gokula. So if Kamalā-kānta is taken to refer to Lakshmi, then we can say that still the name Krishna following that can still refer to the Krishna of Gokula, because it's known that even Lakshmi performed austerities with the hope of participating in the Rasa Lila and so forth. Or, if Kamalā-kānta refers to the lover of Radharani, then the name Krishna following that refers to Krishna of Braja. This is quite natural. So, as I mentioned, this is a verse of Lakshmi Dhar from the Bhagavan Nama Kaumudi. So we don't have any evidence that Lakshmi Dhar himself was an Aikantik Krishna Bhakta of Braja, so that his verse would specifically carry the import of referring ultimately to, Gopinath Krishna or Radhanath Krishna. That may not have been his original specific intent. But, given that this verse is cited by Rupa Goswami, then those following the line of thought of Rupa Goswami may read these names of Bhagavan mentioned in the verse in a way that alludes to, or in a way that nourishes, meditation and remembrance of their Ishtadeva, specifically Dhira Lalita Sri Krishna, as mentioned in the opening verse of Padyavali. So in that way the commentator is, so to speak, taking some liberties to explain the verse in this way. So after all these names, then, just to resume, he calls out to Bhagavan with all these names, and then he says, "Please always make me immersed in the billowing waves of the ocean of the supreme nectar of your beautiful names. Repeatedly mystified, brimming with tears streaming from my eyes, and overwhelmed, O Nātha." So when he's praying to be absorbed in the nectar of these names and then to become mystified, muhyantaṁ, what does he mean by that? The commentator says, mystified, muhyantaṁ, means free from any absorption in the world. In other words, as when the mind is absorbed in Bhagavan's name, then let it not be absorbed, or let no absorption remain in anything else. That is, completely absorbed only in the nectar of Bhagavan's name. And then he says, ultimately let me be overwhelmed. So, avaśaṁ. This means unable to do anything. So, this isn't a pursuit of liberation or a laziness. What he means by unable to do anything is that, let me become so moved by this that it completely overwhelms me, or I'm stunned, so to speak, or I'm left at a loss. So in other words, he wants to feel to the most profound extent such that he loses awareness and capacity for everything else, the richness that is there in these names of Bhagavan. So my only 2 cents here is that although the verse under discussion was written long before Sriman Mahaprabhu's Shikshastakam, the content of the verse is as if a prayer akin to the prayer offered by Śrīman Mahaprabhu in the 6th verse of his Shikshastakam, which is cited later here in Padyavali, that draws upon imagery he uses in the 1st verse of Shikshastakam, which was cited earlier here in Padyavali. So when he says Anandam Buddhivardhanam and Sarvatma Snapanam, these statements that we discussed in relation to the opening verse of describing the greatness of Krishna Sankirtan in this oceanic, nectarian, overwhelming way, then we get that metaphor in that same sense in this verse, and then the prayer in the verse is also akin to the 6th verse of the Shikshastakam, Nayanam galad-aśru-netram, when will tears stream from my eyes as I call your name? So, this is just my personal observation, that although it's in much earlier composition, it as if blends together something of the prayer that Mahaprabhu makes related to chanting the name and the metaphor that Mahaprabhu speaks of to convey something of the wondrousness of the name and the chanting of the name. Okay, so we'll come to the next verse. There's 4 or 5 other verses of similar type, which in this brief prakaran about Krishna Nam or Krishna-kīrtana Mahatmya. So the next is as follows. śrī-kānta Krishna karunāmaya kañja-nābha kaivalya-vallabha mukunda muhyantaṁ Nāma-valim vimala muktikahara lakshmi lavanya vanchana karim karavani kante. So this is another verse of Lakshmi Dhar, the author of the Bhagavan Nam Kaumudi. O śrī-kānta, O Krishna, O Karunamay, O kañja-nābha, O kaivalya-vallabha, O mukunda, O muhyantaṁ. Let me place around my throat these names which beguile the beauty and luster of a spotless pearl necklace. śrī-kānta can be interpreted to refer to the beloved of Lakshmi, or of Radha, as per the interpretation of Kamalā-kānta given in the commentary on the previous verse, since Shri and Kamala are both names used to refer to Lakshmi and to Radha. Krishna, similarly, again can be interpreted to refer to the son of Yashoda, Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna of Gokula. Other names like these that have been explained in the commentaries on earlier verses and occur in subsequent verses of this section will not be commented on again a second time in this section. So, that should be obvious. We're not going to re-gloss the same words right again and again. So, karunamoy means, O you who are filled with compassion. Kañja-nābha means, O you of lotus navel. According to Sri Ramanujapad, the term kaivalya refers to non-existence, that is, liberation from samsara, in the form of experience of one's own self detached from prakriti, as a result of the practice of jnana. The name kaivalya-vallabha is in this way interpreted by the commentator to mean, O you who are the overseer Vallabha, that is, bestower of kaivalya. So, that's how the commentator interprets this name, kaivalya-vallabha. So, on this one, I'm offering an alternative based on some points of Jiva Goswami related to the word kaivalya. So, alternately, the name kaivalya-vallabha can be interpreted in other ways, such as, O you who are desired or beloved Vallabha, by virtue of your one-pointedness, or prema, or purity, kaivalya. So the word kaivalya comes from the word kevala, which means, to be alone, or isolated, or to be singular. So kaivalya is a state of aloneness, or isolatedness, or, in that sense, one-pointedness. So it can be interpreted, and Jiva Goswami, referring to the well-known statement in the 12th canto, where the Bhagavatam is called kaivalyeka prayojanam, that the Bhagavatam is that the only purpose of which is kaivalya, and which Gyanis like to say is, oh look, the whole purpose of the Bhagavatam is just moksha. He deals with that in the Priti Sandarbha in two places to explain that there the word kaivalya doesn't mean merely moksha, it means prema. That this isolatedness or aloneness or singularity means, apart from anything of the mundane, meaning completely fixed upon Bhagavan, or alone in the sense of all upon one, the ultimate object of fixity, Bhagavan. So, and there's no more profound form of fixity than the fixity brought about by prema. So in that way, the word kaivalya can refer to purity as well as prema. These are Jiva Goswami's points in the Priti Sandarbha. So if we apply them here, and Bhagavan is called Kaivalya Vallabha, or then we get these interpretations, that, O you who are desired or beloved by virtue of your one-pointedness. In other words, Bhagavan is beloved because of the prema that he has. Or, O you to whom one-pointedness or prema or purity is dear or beloved. Or, Bhagavan is known as he who relishes prema, or he who holds dear the purity, the one-pointedness, the prema of his bhaktas. So, that's my alternate way of looking at that name, which is a little bit of an uncommon term. So the commentator drew on Ramanuja to give it some explanation in line of Vaishnava thought, because Lakshmidhar, from what we understand, may not have been an Aikantik Vaishnava. In other words, he may have leaned more into a sense of Advaitavad conclusion in his writing. So there's no claim here that one is drawing out the intended point of Lakshmidhar originally, but rather that these are commentaries that are reading these prayers or statements that he wrote in praise of the name in light of how the compiler, namely Rupa Goswami, may have seen them to be applicable to his audience, that is, a Vaishnava audience specifically, following his line of thought and worshipping his Ishta Devata. So, in that way, we justify our application of these, alternate interpretations. Okay, and then the name Mukunda, I've got a few interpretations here, which are not only from the compiler here, but I've drawn them from elsewhere. So, Mukunda can mean, O bestower of liberation. So, mukum da. Da means giver or bestower, and mukum is interpreted by some to mean moksha, or mukti. Or, it can also refer, but then you may say, I've got here a reference to Baladeva Vibhushan's commentary, where he accepts that interpretation, that Bhagavan is the bestower of liberation, but the implication is typically liberation from samsara. But he says, but we could also take it to be liberation from separation, or liberation from viraha. So Bhagavan, to be the, quote, liberator from separation, is he who gives darshan to his bhaktas, or to his parikaras. So that's one way that Baladeva Vibhushan takes the meaning of that name. O bestower of that bliss upon account of which even mukti becomes contemptible. So this is an interpretation that Sanatana Goswami gives, and Chakravarti Pad also gives it elsewhere. So he gives a triple break. In other words, rather reading it as mukum, mukti da, he reads it as mu simply refers to mukti. So mu da, giver of moksha, but ku. So the prefix ku can also refer to something kutsita, or contemptible, or abhorrent, or undesirable. So he who gives that which makes mukti contemptible. So that would be, a type of bliss, or a prema, which is so wonderful that one loses one's interest in even moksha. So that's one way that the Gaudiya Acharyas also interpret the name Mukunda. Or, a couple of additional meanings. the word mu, instead of referring to mukti, can also refer to mukh, or the face. So you whose face resembles a jasmine flower, or a kunda flower, which is a particular variety of jasmine. So rather than taking the da in the sense of a giver, then kunda is kept as a word. So kunda means jasmine flowers. So mu kunda, face jasmine. In other words, whose face resembles a jasmine flower. Or, taken using the same basic root, but reading the compound or the relationship between the two words differently, it can also mean, O you in whose mu, or mukh, mouth, there are the jasmine flowers of your beautiful teeth. So, face jasmine, that can mean either that the face is like jasmine, or that in the face there is jasmine. So if you take it as in the face there is jasmine, then the idea is that in the face there are teeth that resemble jasmine flowers. So this is also given by Sanatana Goswami Pad. So for the most part, I'm presenting comments given by the Padyavali commentator, but in some cases I'm adding additional comments given by the previous acharyas, and I'll note when I'm giving something other than what the original commentator gave. And I'll take credit for the sake of being corrected of the ones that I add as well. Murantaka is generally understood to mean, O destroyer of the asura Mura, but can also be interpreted to mean, O you who are the destroyer, antaka, of contempt, Mura. That is, O you who are supremely beautiful. So this comes from the Saranga Tika on the Krishna Karnamrita. So Kaviraj Goswami there, when he's commenting on the name Murari, or Murantaka, or Muraripu, many names like this, which come in the Krishna Karnamrita, then he takes them in a way that refers less to this asura that Krishna killed when he wasn't in Braja, and more to a sense that's applicable to Krishna as he's engaged directly in his Leela in Braja. So this mur dhatu can, one sense that it can refer to is this idea of contempt, or something being fit to be shunned. So if you destroy or you remove contempt, that means you're now supplying something that's desirable or something that's wonderful. So he takes it that to be the remover of contemptibility, in other words, means to be perfect, to have nothing in oneself that is a cause of contempt, in other words, who's supremely beautiful or supremely perfect. Or a second interpretation, which is also possible, and that comes from another explanation in the Saranga Tika on Krishna Karnamrita, is as follows. O you who are the destroyer of encompassing. So the root mur can also refer to surrounding or encompassing something, the act of circling. So if you interpret it in that way, then, O you who are the destroyer of, quote, encompassing, so encompassing can refer to bondage. So something that encompasses someone encloses them in that, or it binds them. So then, what are things that cause bondage? Then ignorance, avidya, or shyness, fear, other obstacles to meeting and beholding Krishna. So in the context of Brajalila, in the context of the Karnamrita, where principally Madhura Rasa is being described, then the bondage or the encompassing bonds that are referred to primarily are those that obstruct Krishna from meeting with the gopis. So Murantaka can mean you who break down or you who remove these obstacles to meeting. And you could perhaps quote here, there's a verse, maybe I didn't want to be too elaborate, but you could add here, there's one verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Maybe I'll pull it up here, I don't have it memorized, but it's a lovely verse related to this. One sec, let me see if I can get it quickly. Just a sec. I think it's worth the wait. Where did I put it? Here we go. Karna kari saki janena vijane duti stuti prakriya pratyurvanchana chaturi ganika kunja prayane nishi bhadir yam guru vachi venu viruta utkarnate ti vritan kaishurena tavadya krishna guruna gaurigana patyate. So in the Sindhu, then this is a statement of a messenger who comes to Krishna and gives him some news. And this is the news that Krishna gets. Quote, whispering ear to ear with a friend. The technique of offering praise of messengers in private. Dexterity in deception of the husband. The practice of sneaking out to an arbor at night, deafness to the speech of elders, keeping the ears pricked at the sound of the flute. O Krishna, today, with the guru of your adolescence, fair young gopis are studying all these rites. So, it's a poetic way of saying that as students come and learn how to perform particular rituals from a guru, then it's as if Krishna's beauty or his adolescence and charm is like a guru. And the students of that guru are the gopis. And what that guru is teaching them is it's making them listen with their ears pricked anytime they hear the flute. And it's also making them turn a deaf ear to anything that their elders say. And it's teaching them how to sneak out at night to meet with Krishna, and how to cleverly deceive their husband as they do so, and how to speak to messengers who are exchanging messages between Krishna and Radharani, how to get the messenger favorable to one's own side by praising the messenger, and how to whisper to one another into the ears of their friends to convey information without anyone else hearing. Just Krishna's beauty itself is teaching them all this. In other words, the intensity of their desire is, necessity is felt because of this desire, and that necessity is the mother of invention, or, under that feeling of great necessity, they're developing these capacities, if you will. So, anyhow, this is something that is cited in the Sindhu to illustrate Krishna's quality of being enchanting, or mohanata. So, that he's described here as the remover of bondage, or the remover of encompassing obstacles. We could say that name, Murantaka, could ultimately refer to this, or that he's the remover of obstructions to meeting and beholding himself. So we could in that way take this name Murantaka to refer to our Dhira Lalita Sri Krishna.
Therefore, what's the number of this verse?
Which, the verse that I'm quoting?
Just now.
I'll share it later.
Thank you.
So, like this, we can read all of these names in the verse as referring specifically to Brajendranandan Sri Krishna, or, of course, can also be interpreted more broadly to refer to various names of Bhagavan. So, then the metaphor in the verse is explained as follows. Let me place around my throat these names which beguile the beauty and luster of a spotless pearl necklace. Implies that one becomes supremely beautiful, that is, more beautiful than one does even by wearing a spotless pearl necklace, by holding these names in one's throat, that is, by continuously chanting them, or by writing them upon one's throat or other limbs with tilak. So the commentator adds that bit about writing it with tilak, but I think the chanting bit is more likely the primary intention. So there's also, I can't recall where it's from, but I remember reading somewhere some statement I don't know if it's of the gopis in general or Radharani, but a statement such that although they wear very beautiful necklaces, the greatest charm or the greatest ornament on their throats is their singing of Krishna. And although they wear beautiful earrings, the most beautiful ornament on their ears is their continuous hearing about Krishna. There's somewhere some verse like that somewhere. So Vaishnavas, they may dress simply. In other words, classically Vaishnav renunciates, they have, a chadar and a tulsi mala and some tilak. This is the extent of their ornaments. But it can be said that the chanting of the names of Krishna in their throats and the continuous hearing of Krishna's leelas and qualities with their ears, that actually these, poor, barely clad, renounced Vaishnavas are wearing the most beautiful ornaments of all. So those who can see that or appreciate those type of ornaments, they are also blessed to do so. All right, let's do one more. Krishna Rama Mukunda Vamana Vasudeva Jagat Guru Matsya Kachapa Narasingha Varaha Raghava Pahimam Deva Danava Naradadi Munindra Vandya Dayanidhe Devaki Sutta Dehi Me Tava Padabhakti Machanchalam. O Krishna, O Rama, O Mukunda, O Vamana, O Vasudeva, O Guru of the world, O Matsya, O Kurma, O Narasingha, O Varaha, O Raghava, please protect me. O you who are worshipped by the Devas, Danavas, and foremost of sages, led by Narada, O ocean of grace, O son of Devaki, please grant me unwavering bhakti to your feet. Rama may be considered to carry the same meanings as mentioned earlier, or to refer to the son of Dasharatha. Vamana is the name of the dwarf Brahmana avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. Vasudeva has various meanings, such as son of Vasudeva, that is Sri Krishna, and he who is the overseer and worshipable devata of the Chitta, and those like the following from the Vishnu Puran, quote, he dwells in everything and everything dwells in him. Since this is certainly so, he is called Vasudeva by the wise. And Parabrahman, the Deva of he whose dwelling place is the dwelling place of all, and in whose pores exist the universes, is called Vasudeva. It may be considered that the names Krishna and son of Devaki, Devaki Sutta, are placed first and last in the verse, so as to imply that Sri Krishna is the preeminent manifestation of Sri Bhagavan, that is, Swayam Bhagavan, upon whom all other manifestations of Sri Bhagavan, mentioned in the verse are dependent, in accord with the compiler's theology, wherein Sri Krishna is regarded as the form of Bhagavan himself, or the Swayam Rupa. So Rupa Goswami defines this concept of Swayam Rupa in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita as he whose form is non-dependent on any other form of Bhagavan is called Swayam Rupa. In other words, he's not dependent on any other, but all others are dependent on him. Therefore, he is Bhagavan himself. So if we read the verse which mentions the names of these various other avatars, but we can say that by mentioning Krishna first and last, we could read it in the light of Rupa Goswami's theology to highlight that Krishna is supreme among all forms of Bhagavan, in a manner similar to the concluding verse of the Dashavatar Stotra of Jayadev Goswami. Matsya refers to Sri Krishna's avatar as a fish, Kurma to his avatar as a tortoise, Narasingha to his avatar in a half-man, half-lion form, Varaha to his avatar, that should be singular, avatar as a boar, and Raghava to his avatar as a descendant of Raghu, that is, as Rama, the son of Dasharat of Ayodhya. The name son of Devaki, Devaki Sutta, can be understood to refer to Sri Krishna as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva of Mathura, or to refer to Sri Krishna, there should be, as the son of Yashoda and Nanda of Gokula. By considering that the name Devaki refers to Krishna's mother in Gokula, Yashoda, since Devaki was a second personal name of Yashoda, and the name Yashoda can be understood to mean she who gives Da, the fame, Yasha, of being Krishna's mother to Devaki of Mathura. So this is an interpretation that's based on a statement in the Brihad Vishnu Puran, which Sanatana Goswami and others quote in the 10th canto commentaries, and Chakravarti Pad adds to that, or perhaps somewhere Jiva Goswami or Sanatana Goswami also give this interpretation. It's possible, but I have here direct reference to a case of Vishnu Chakravarti, where he explains the name Yashoda, or giving Yasha, giving fame or giving renown, meaning she who gave the fame of being Krishna's mother to Devaki. In other words, she's actually Krishna's mother, but she was content with someone else getting the fame for that. So generally speaking, from the conventional understanding and at first sight reading, so to speak, of the Puranas, Devaki is known to be the mother of Yashoda. Of Krishna. So in that way, the name Devaki Sutta can refer to Krishna of Mathura, or for the followers of Rupa Goswami who are especially fond of the Krishna of Braja, they can also think of the name Devaki Sutta as referring to their Ishta Devata. Alright, so let's stop here for today, and we'll continue with a few more verses of similar type in our next discussion. So if there's any further comments or questions, feel free to share. Yes?
Hare Krishna, Pranamam, Padavats. Listening to these quotes of Lakshmidhar and interpretation of Gaudiya Vaishnavas in context of Padyavali, Vraja Bhakti, I was wondering if you can just have some more elaboration on in the context of this verse from Bhagavatam, where it explains that Tattvavids are of three types: those who perceive Absolute as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Is that what I can observe, that every school of thought, I would say, borrows or from other schools, like, for example, like Lakshmidhara, and even from we borrow from quotes from Advaita school, not necessarily to prove whatever enhances our school of thought, and ultimately, Absolute is one, but interpreted in different ways. And there's two things what I want to say is that first of all, there's no conflict between these three schools of thought. They simply aim and understanding Absolute in different three ways. And another thing is that that just like Vaishnavas can use quotes from different writings to interpret them in context of Braja Bhakti. Same thing, even Vaishnava of Sri Ramanuja would interpret or find quotes from different school of thought to support their objective of Vishnu as objective, Vaikuntha as objective destination and prayojan. And same way, Advaitavadis would also interpret Bhagavatam to convince themselves, to prove that Bhagavat, the Advaita school. It's not really a question, but I was wondering if this is like kind of, is it a kindness of Bhagavan upon jivas to let himself to be split in three and satisfy everybody? Or is there, we know that we have clear understanding that actually the Supreme is Bhagavan above all these three. And is this kindness upon jivas that Bhagavan presents himself, allows himself to be divided and interpreted and approached in different ways? Or is actually, no, he's just actually, if you study very deeply, he allows himself to be discovered as a person. Does this inspire you to say something to that?
I mean, one way we can say is that all of it is beginningless, so it has no cause. It just is. Yes. That's one perspective. Another perspective is that Bhagavan is a relisher of rasa and a relisher of many types. There's not just one taste, there's many. And it's by having a plurality and an adjusted degree of the different elements within the plurality that each one tastes especially good. So he can relish, the bhakti of many different classes of bhaktas. He can also relish the reverence of persons who follow other paths or who seek to, exist in, a non-differentiated state with him. He can accommodate and satisfy all, and he evidently takes supreme pleasure in all that he does. So it's all good, and according to the samskaras that individuals acquire, according to the sangha that they get, according to the inscrutable unfolding of all of this, then in particular individuals gravitate towards particular aspects of this paratattva and find satisfaction in them. Because satisfaction is not an absolute measure, it's simply when the attunement of the psyche meets with... Oh, sorry about that. One sec. Oh dear. So I was just saying that, the satisfaction that that anyone feels is simply based on the way that their psyche is set up. So we hear in the Ramananda Sangvad this phrase, Jarje bhav se sarvotam tatasta vichar hoile achitaratam, that there may be an impartial gradation in the intensity of experiences that people have, but people actually feel satisfied when they experience a particular relationship and set of events or objects that are correlated specifically to the attunement of their own psyche. And they're completely content with that. So there are so many ways in which people are set up according to the sangha, samskaras, etc. they have, and therefore they feel completely fulfilled with those things. So therefore, people follow the Advaita Marg, people follow Vaishnava paths, people worship Ram, people worship Krishna. It's all more or less automatic. It's all more or less fine and happening according to the drive that every embodied being has towards the pursuit of sukh and the pursuit of freedom from dukh. This is how the basic, way the psyche functions in the embodied state. So Bhagavan has all these different ways by which he manifests himself and allows and creates this whole myriad of wondrous leelas and manifestations and so forth. And, he being the supreme blissful entity finds joy in all of them and, a gradation in that as well. So we do best to deliberate carefully upon what will be worthy of pursuit and then absorb ourselves in that and take the path of least resistance towards that object. So the fact that other people might not be going towards that object, that's completely okay, and we only waste our own time and set our own selves back by being bothered by the pursuit of others towards other things. It's only when we lack shraddha in our object that we're bothered and want to convert or argue or whatever with people who think another way. And if we have great conviction and affinity for that object, then we take the most efficient route towards that object, which is the path of respect and non-expectation of respect and absorption in that object.
Yeah, that's perfect comment. So it only highlights I think everything evolves around Krishna being Savai Rasavai Raso. He's basically source of all rasas, all type of relationship, all type of perceptions. And that's the whole summum bonum of everything. And yet inside there's variegatedness, there's a gradation of rasa. And this is what Goswamis try to elaborate and point that the highest rasa is Madhurya rasa. It's just so amazing, how Krishna is so accommodating, and yet, it's accessible to its highest, if possible. It's one of his glories, amazing. I just simply appreciate that his kindness.
Beautiful. All right, well, we can wrap it up there for today. Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Jai Shri Guru, Jai Shri Gaur, Jai Jai Shri Shri Radhe.
Jai Shri Guru, Shri Radhe.
Shyam.